In the next couple of presentations, we're going to be looking at factors that affect businesses. In this particular presentation here, we're going to be looking at internal factors. And internal factors are those factors from inside the business that the business has control over changing. So the internal factors can be changed by the organisation if they're not quite working out properly, or you can enhance them, you can keep them going if they are doing really well. Now, a lot of this was covered at National 5. So, as I say, we're going to concentrate on one particular internal factor, which wasn't discussed at National 5, and this is the company's corporate culture. So, what you have to know at this stage is you have to be able to discuss the effects of strong or weak staffing, the effects of strong or weak financial position in the business, being technology advanced or behind your rivals, and of course, we're talking about a strong or a weak corporate culture. And that is, we're going to very, very quickly talk about the first of these and spend a little bit more time talking about the corporate culture. Staffing talks about employees or managers. Employees in the organisation are carrying out a function. They're doing a job for the business. Managers are the ones who are going to make the decisions about how the business is going to be run. They are both staff members and they can have a good or a bad effect on the business. If you have a strong staff who are well trained, who really know their job, who get on along well together, then you'll find that they will have a positive impact on your business. However, if you have, let's talking, I'd say you have a management team who are not very well trained, who are not very good at making decisions, any decisions they make don't do the business any favours, then you'll find that that will lead or help to lead to the business's downfall. So staffing looks at positives and negatives about the management and the staff of the organisation and how these factors can be made even better or improved if they're at a stage where they're not very good just now. Then we look at the technology used in the firm. Now, what you're going to notice here is that technology is going to be both an internal and an external factor. It's an internal factor because businesses have an obligation, I suppose, to make sure that they're keeping up with technology. If your technology is not allowing you to be competitive compared to your rivals, then perhaps you should be looking at better forms of technology. An example could be, you go to Tesco and you go to Morrison's, etc., and they are now moving on with technology as far as customers are concerned and making the customer experience a lot slicker by having the little handheld scanners where you can, beep the barcode of the product as you're going round the shop and automatically bag the shopping. So that's taken away for you the act of having to put the stuff from the trolley onto the conveyor belt, then the conveyor belt into the bag. So you're actually missing out a step there. Now, if you look at Aldi, for example, Aldi don't have that, neither do Lidl. Now, they have chosen at this stage not to have these handheld scanners, bearing in mind they are budget supermarkets and they maybe feel that that's really not what they're aiming to do. Now, what it could do for Aldi or Lidl is it could actually put them in a sort of less competitive position as far as technology is concerned because the customer likes a nice quick shop. I suppose Aldi and Lidl do that in different ways by making sure that when you get to the checkout it's all very, very quick. However, it could feel that customers are maybe thinking they're not keeping up with technology. So that's an example of Aldi or Lidl have the opportunity to do that, but they're choosing at this point in time not to do that. So are they really keeping up with technology? Maybe not as far as the other supermarkets are concerned. And what that could do is it could be a bit detrimental to their competitive position in the market. So businesses can buy into this technology. It's their choice, and that's what makes it an internal factor. The third part here is the firm's financial position. And businesses have to have money to reinvest in the business, to grow the business, to be able to train staff, to be able to buy new technology, etc., and to obviously market their products and introduce new products, develop new products. Now, businesses can change that. They can, if they don't feel as though they've got enough money to do things like that, then they can perhaps maybe sell more shares, or they could maybe get a loan from the bank, or try to apply for a grant, or do whatever. And these are ways in which the business can improve their financial position. So if the financial position isn't looking good, they can change that. There is a way for them to change that by finding some source of finance or perhaps cutting back in other areas, and that's what makes it an internal factor. So all of these will be discussed in more depth in your notes, and we wouldn't be spending an awful lot of time on them here because they're relatively straightforward. The fourth factor is what we call the business's corporate culture, and the next few slides are going to spend a little bit of time talking about the corporate culture. Now, as far as exams are concerned, what would I say here? I would say that you should be able to discuss a business's corporate culture, the advantages and disadvantages of having a strong corporate culture. That to me would be a really good exam question. You might find that's in your notes and it's already discussed for you. Another thing that they normally do in the exam here is they normally relate it to the case study. So it might be asking you what a particular company is doing, the case study company is doing, to ensure a positive corporate culture. And that's really important for you to understand. So we spend a little bit more time here looking at ways in which a business can instill a really strong corporate culture. So it's a set of values, beliefs and customs, and it's shared by all the people in the organisation. So the staff all buy into it, the managers all buy into it, and it obviously cascades down to the customers as well. And how can they do that? They can have values. Now, the values can come in the form of a mission statement, which we'll talk about shortly. So the business will normally have a written set of values, perhaps on its website, and you'll be able to see what the business believes in, what they think. For example, Tesco have got a little helps policy, and what that does is it shows how they are looking after staff, it shows how they are looking after the environment and trying to be, socially responsible, etc. And that's really a list of their values, that little helps policy. It might be the organisation's got corporate colours, so you can recognise the business by the logo, you can recognise it by walking in and you can see the corporate colours there, things like that. So we know that McDonald's are red and yellow, and you know that you can identify that as being McDonald's. The layout of the organisation can be very similar for different branches. So for example, if you walk into one branch of Morrison's, it's very, very, very similar to walking into another branch of Morrison's. You always start with the fruit and veg, the bakery will be at the back, etc. And that means that there's this, that it follows through, the layout follows through to all the different branches. So no matter what branch a customer is shopping in, then it will be the same. And it will be the same for staff members having to move around as well. No matter which one they're working in, they might be moving around, then you'll find that they'll be very familiar with the layout because the layouts are all the same, and that makes it corporate. Okay, it might be they use different language or jargon. For example, Google. Anybody new to Google is called a noogler. And these are just different terms that they use, and you'll find different organisations will have different terminology that they may use, different jargon that makes them corporate. Symbols, slogans and mottos, we've kind of chatted a little bit about that when I mentioned like brand logos, etc. It might be, they'll have some kind of slogan. You see these in adverts, you see them on their poly bags, etc. And that gives you an idea that this is a company with a strong corporate culture. They may be the reward culture, the way they reward their staff, the way they reward their customers. You've got Tesco with their club card. That makes them very corporate. They've got a strong corporate culture because a lot of customers buy into the card because they get lots of great deals from it. So things like that. They could even reward their staff. If staff in a certain company receive a certain amount of sales, then you might find that they get some kind of reward for it. And that's all down to the way they treat their staff. If you look at, we would have covered Google when we were actually doing this task, then you'll find that Google do an awful lot for their staff in lots of different ways, between dry cleaning, bringing your pets to work, giving you free food for your lunch and your breakfast, etc., allowing you to dress down to come to work, having nap pods and places for exercise at lunchtime. All of these things are down to the way that they treat their staff. Now, this is what I was saying earlier on. I think it's really important that you are aware of the advantages and disadvantages to a company of having a strong corporate culture, a positive corporate culture. Employees feel more part of the organisation. They may be wearing a uniform. They know how the company works. They don't feel awkward when they go from one branch of the company to another. So they feel part of the organisation. as a result of that, the customers gain a sense of quality because they have spent so much time and money building up this corporate culture. The customers feel that perhaps it is a really strong, good company to shop with. There'll be a positive ethos for staff because of the reward culture and the way they treat their staff. You'll find then that staff will be loyal to the organisation. They might not want to move anywhere else because they're quite happy. And what you would also do perhaps is attract a high quality of new staff to the business, so people will perhaps want to work in the business because it's a great place to work. The story goes that for every job that is advertised at Google, there are thousands and thousands of applicants for the one job because it has got such a strong corporate culture and appears to be such a great place to work. However, what are the disadvantages then of a strong corporate culture? It's hard to introduce. It costs a lot of money and it takes a lot of time for you to be able to do that, to build that up. This strong corporate culture could result in changes that staff are perhaps not happy with. It doesn't necessarily appeal to all employees. It might be a case of changing the office environment for open plan working or home working or flexible working, etc. It might not be every employee's cup of tea. Some cultures can be seen as a bribe to get staff on board. Some cynical, perhaps, employees might feel that the company is doing this just to try and get them into this kind of cult way of working, whatever. It could be that. And what you've got to be careful is that the management in the organisation can lose focus if the culture just becomes a little bit too loose. Perhaps letting staff do just too much on their own, allowing them to go and have breaks at lunchtime and go for naps, etc. What happens if they don't get back on time, etc. So that can kind of cause a few headaches for managers. But this is a really important slide, and I would suggest that you look very carefully at this one. The next slide just shows you a wee video linked to corporate culture, which you might find useful. A wee YouTube video, so you can log on to that and see what it says. And as I say, this would be a research task that you would cover in class, comparing the corporate culture of two different companies, Amazon and Google, and what you would find is they're quite different. Amazon doesn't really have a very strong corporate culture, whereas Google very much does, and they look after their staff very well, and there's a nice feeling about the place. This slide here is all about, and this is the final slide, mission statements. We spoke a little bit earlier on about values, and this was something that kind of came across from America, where companies nowadays like to have a mission statement. And what this mission statement does is it sets out the overall aims and objectives of the organisation. And what that does is it allows staff to let customers know what it's all about. What is this company trying to do? What are its aims and objectives, so customers can get on board with it? It will sometimes promote CSR, social responsibility aims that they're trying to achieve. That's a good way of building your CSR aims into your organisation, is through your mission statement. It could attract quality staff because they'll like the aims and objectives of the business. They'll like the way it sounds, so it could attract good quality staff. And finally, it could allow potential investors to see what the goals of the overall aims of the organisation are, and it might encourage them to invest more. And what this will do, having this mission statement, then harks back to building a strong corporate culture.